Broadcasting from Now Media Network's headquarters in Houston, this is Be Productive, hosted by business strategist and productivity expert Clara Capano. Join us to discuss the most critical issues affecting our businesses with a fresh, practical, and objective discussion on the first bilingual media network in the United States. Be Productive starts right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Be Productive. I am your host, Clara Capano, and I have the privilege and honor of bringing you straightforward and practical advice from industry experts, all designed to help you level up and really get the results that you want. You know, in a lot of the trainings that I do, one of the messages I love to share is it matters who says it, meaning we've got to pay attention to those people around us and what they are saying, because oftentimes those messages that others state are gold. And that's exactly what we're doing today. So it matters who says it when it comes to understanding the importance of getting reviews and testimonials. Let's make sure that our clients are talking about the experience that they are having for us. It matters when others talk about the importance of embracing connections. You know, none of us achieves success alone. So let's make sure that we are building strategic partners and embracing those connections. It matters who says it when we are talking about scaling and growing our businesses. We have to grow, but let's do it the right way. And lastly, it matters who says it when we talk about the bottom line. And what are some of the keys that we need to pay attention to make sure we are in compliance? So sit back, get your notepad ready, because you're going to want to take some notes from today's experts as we dive into some of the key components that are going to help you be productive. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Be Productive. This is the show where we talk about key strategies to help you get from just being busy to being productive. You know, as a business owner and leader, when you start to become productive, more business happens, and that's fantastic. But what we also know is that this is going to cause us to have to grow and have to scale with purpose so that we can maintain our levels of productivity. So to help us with the conversation about how you can scale with purpose and with intention, I am bringing in growth business strategist, Mark Wetzig. So Mark, thanks for helping me with the conversation.
Thank you, Clara. Good to be here.
You know, this is really powerful because I don't think enough of us pay attention to the importance and the thought process that when we do more business, things have to change. And it can cause a lot of stress. It can cause a lot of overwhelm. And there really is a science behind scaling and growing in the right way. So from a strategist perspective, what are some of the key factors that business owners and leaders should consider when they are scaling their business?
Well, there really are time-tested. There are three main reasons that you go through a growth phase, and there's called, what I term a bottleneck. And that is, there are three things really run a business. It's systems and processes, it's people, and then it's the leadership of the owner. So that cycle keeps going through depending on what phase you're in. So often, a business starts up and things are somewhat informal, maybe bootstrapped together. But then at some point, you need some systems and processes in order to be able to document, things more than just the finances. How do you do things? What are the control mechanisms? And from there, then you start to eventually need people. But if you have additional people without the processes and systems in place, it can easily turn into chaos. So, not only are these three elements a cycle with each other, but they have to be done in the proper sequence. And so, and then the other key thing is leadership. As time goes on, an owner of a startup business has very different roles than an owner of a business doing, say, $5 to $8 million, $10 million a year. And they need to understand that, because you can't affect change in your business if you can't affect change in your own role within your business.
Very true. So I want to go to the second component, the people. I am a firm believer that one of the keys to long-term success is building a strong culture and living by the values that leadership and the organization have set. One of the biggest challenges is that when we grow, sometimes we can be at risk for losing some of the continuity in our culture and in the values. So, how do you help business owners balance that growth with the maintenance of their culture and their values?
Well, I think the main thing that I see in business, though not everyone agrees, but I think this is true, is that people want, if you're an employee looking for an employer, you want to be led. But the caveat with that is that you want to have structure in place so that you know what the expectations are. There's some reliability, there's some consistency, and then the leadership ties into that. Leadership, if you're an employee and there's leadership but there's chaos, nobody wins. So it's really that factor of balancing, what are the expectations that are on me as an employee? How do I contribute? How do I help this company grow, and measure my success and support what the owner wants? And then the owner in reciprocation is doing the same thing for their employees. So it becomes a much more synergistic, in a synergistic environment there. And it really does make a difference. I've personally been in both ends of environments, and I can tell you it just makes a huge difference. And with the challenge today of being able to acquire, train, and retain employees, it's a difference maker. It can be a real game changer, because the employment landscape is changing radically in this country, with all the layoffs and the downsizing and the readjusting of corporate America. A lot of people are looking to small businesses the solution. They don't necessarily want to be the owner, but they can contribute in huge ways to the growth of companies. But in order to do that, they want that structure, and they want that leadership. They're looking for that, and you have to be able to provide that as part of the leadership component of being the owner.
Absolutely. I see so many times leaders, they start to disappear. And this is when almost more than ever, they need to lean in, keep the communication going, keep a pulse point, because again, even though it's going to change, that's okay. We just need to make sure that, again, we're in it with them, and that they, like you talked about, they have that stability, because I think people really, look for that. So when you're working with your business owners, what would you say are some of the most common challenges that people have when it comes to scaling their business, and how do you address those?
They don't want to delegate. They don't want to share success. There's kind of there's a boss, or employer, and because the employer is the owner, there's an employer-employee wall that happens, usually because very often because the owner has felt they have to do everything, which in most instances they have. But there's a certain point where you have to release the reins, and you have to trust and delegate and move things to other people. So that's probably one of the biggest ones, is being able to release the reins. But if you do that as a responsible owner, as part of your responsibility as an owner, is that you have to give them structure to then perform that delegated duty in. And so that's that balance, to back to what we were talking about initially, about all the commonality and the synergy between processes and systems, people, and leadership, because you have to be aware of all three. Is it perfect? No, there's usually something that kind of gets out of balance. But if there's an awareness and a sensitivity as an owner to constantly looking for improvement, employees can feel that. Employees know that. If you're an employer that is just trying to kind of wring it, ride it out, or wring what you can out of the business, you can feel that as well. So it's just part of the kind of the groundwork for the personality that an owner has to take on with their business. And a lot of people, particularly in the technical world, may not necessarily have evolve or develop the people skills over the years, but they need to, and it's really important for them to, because it with this competitive environment, people will stay because of intangible reasons, and people will leave because of them as well.
Absolutely. I am a firm believer that most people don't leave primarily because of money. It's
No.
primarily because of the culture and do they feel valued? And I
Right.
love what you talked about, this idea of you have to evolve. Growth is going to happen, and that's a good thing. But again, it has to be done with purpose. So I love all these topics. And again, you've been doing this for a long time and you've been able to successfully guide so many business owners into being able to grow with purpose. So where can people find you if others want to reach out and learn more about you and the services that you provide?
My website is www.reignitegrowthcoach.com. My email address is markw@reignitegrowthcoach.com. And then my cell and text number is 303-921-3440.
Beautiful. Well, Mark, thanks again for sharing in the conversation. And for those of you watching, some great tidbits. Remember, we have to constantly evolve. You might be familiar with the quote that says you're either growing or you're dying. So as a business owner, growth is a good thing, but take some of the tips that we just went over. Be purposeful and have systems in place to help you through the growth. Make sure you are leaning in and really communicating with your team so that you can maintain quality culture. And then again, delegate. You are not going to be able to do it all, nor should you be able to do it all. You need to free your time up to do the things that are going to be the best quality and the highest priorities for you. And when you do all these things, you're going to be able to really just go through that change with more ease and more grace. So thanks for joining the conversation. We'll be right back for more Be Productive. Welcome back to Be Productive. I am your host, Clara Capano. Talking about compliance and following the rules is not always the sexiest and flashiest thing to talk about, but it is critical because here at Be Productive, we are talking with industry experts and we are talking about how we can watch that bottom line. And the more that we can show up with purpose, intention, and focus, that's really where the magic happens. And the magic isn't going to happen unless we are operating at a high level of compliance. So to talk with us about how we can stay compliant and how we can really work to educate our team on staying compliant in the workspace, I have my friend Chase Traffica here from Turner Insurance and Policies here to talk with us about some issues with compliance webinars. So Chase, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Claire. It's great to be here.
You got it. So, you do a lot with your company about helping people maintain compliance and maintain safety so that they can, again, operate at the highest levels possible. Therefore, again, really being productive and purposeful in all they do. One of the best ways that we can do this and to stay connected with people on a global and nationwide level is through technology, namely webinars. So talk to us a little bit about some of the compliance webinars that you are doing in your company and how you are using these to stay connected as well as keeping your people updated with some of the latest trends.
Right, absolutely. So we use these internally and externally for our clients. We've just seen an uptick, obviously, in technology since COVID, people working remotely. So we've seen an opportunity where we can go in and instead of individually having an hour meeting, we can have that same meeting with dozens of people, hundreds at times when we're talking to clients that can cover those topics, and they can do so in 30 to 45 minutes. It saves time, it keeps people interactive, and it also reaches broader audiences.
Yeah. What I love about the webinars, and you hit on this with the broader audiences, is sometimes the way that someone is doing it in one city may be a little bit different than another city. And by bringing all the different regions and areas together, you can really get different perspectives that might help everybody level up and, just impact everybody. So when you're doing these webinars, what are some of the topics? Can you give us an idea of a few of the topics that you encourage companies to have?
Yeah, absolutely. So, touching on that point, I think sometimes businesses will have a tendency to do something so well, they forgot what they started doing that got them to that point. When this happens, complacency can set in, or just outright a lack of being able to change and innovate. So, a lot of times our webinars can be about compliance, but they can also be about best practices. So anytime we can put on a webinar for, let's say, the construction industry, and we can say, hey, here's what we're seeing from, we have over 150 clients. So we can bring best practices in from 100 to 120 of those clients into one virtual room and share those ideas, whether it be safety, risk management, whether it be employee benefits, or topics like forklift safety. Those things can be shared throughout the group, and it really manages to be able to give everybody a little more insight into what they're doing day to day.
Can you give us any examples, maybe of a success story of maybe a training that you had with a company and how that impacted them long term in the success of their company and maybe their bottom line?
Absolutely. So we had a client that was very much stressing about a visit from OSHA. They had not had a visit from OSHA in quite a while. They did not understand the audit process. They didn't understand where the violations and the trends had started to navigate towards when OSHA came into a business. That week, we had an OSHA webinar where we had a OSHA professional come on and kind of just walk through the entire audit process, talk a little bit about what they were looking for, what they were seeing, and points of emphasis. And we were able to go out and say, hey, let's do a pre-audit, what OSHA would do when they came in, and we went through it, found some places they could improve. They fixed those things, and then when OSHA came in, they were very much ready, which 2 weeks previous they would not have been. And whether it was fines or penalties, they might have been levied against. So that was a very a situation where they were able to use the webinar and put it into practice, and it helped them financially as well.
I really love that example because, when you have, a government agency like OSHA coming in, it is, and it can be very overwhelming and scary for people to go in, and being able to meet with them ahead of time, like you did, to build the confidence in your clients. So again, not only did the meeting go better, but I would imagine that they went in there with a certain degree of higher confidence. And I'm sure that that was felt on the other side as well. So again, I love that you're partnering with your people, not just when there is a problem, but helping them to, again, prepare so that they can, really make sure that they are, hitting things head on and having that strength and confidence. Now, when we're doing these webinars, what is the role and what is the impact that these webinars can also have for a company when it comes to a company preparing for risk management and also trying to determine some of the planning that they need to do as far as what insurance coverage they might need?
Yeah, absolutely. So a huge part of what we try to do, and it kind of goes away from the norm, is we don't want somebody from our company giving an advertisement about our company. We really try to help people and bring in experts, sort of like you do on your show, where you say, hey, tell us what you're seeing in the industry. How can we help our clients, and what they can do in a day-to-day situation that will really help them navigate any trials or tribulations they may have coming. So anytime we can bring on an expert and speak to our clients, we try to do so. I also think that anytime you can come in and bring a program or a technology or any kind of sister company that may be able to help them with these programs, that is a third party not associated with us, but they really can help their business. I think that's very impactful as well.
You know, you hit something so key and so important that I'm really hoping the viewer has heard. And it's this idea of value. You know,
Mhm.
part of the value we deliver is the strategic partnerships that we build. And that is what I hear that you and your company are doing. It's not just about your singular products, it's about, again, pairing them with your other partnerships so that the companies that you work with not just get the strength of you, but get the strength of your network. And that's really, again, what you are bringing in. It's not just your individual company, it's the years of experience and the relationships that you have built. So again, I love that the idea that you are doing that to make sure that everybody is getting the best of the best and really being able to educate them at a high level. So Chase, tell us a little bit, because I know your company's been around for almost 100 years. So tell us a little bit about where we can learn more about your company and some of the services that you can provide.
Absolutely. So if you go to turnerfirst.com, we actually just got a rehaul of our website. So all of the links are there, whether you need insurance, risk management, surety help, or even, go to our webinars and learn something for free as well. So that is at turnerfirst.com.
Beautiful. Well, Chase, thanks so much for being here. And for all of you that are watching, again, make sure that you are staying connected with your people. With the age of technology, it is easy. So make sure that you are connecting with them. Again, just as he said, these meetings don't have to be boring. They can be really tactical. It's a great way for you to connect, network, educate, inform, and make it very interactive. But all the things that you do today are really going to help to empower your team and your company for tomorrow. And remember, we're here as strategic partners. So let's make sure that we are bringing the value and we are strengthening everyone so that we can be elevated together. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break for more Be Productive. Welcome back to Be Productive. We are here and we are talking about how we can stay productive and stay on top of everything we're doing by making sure that we are having third-party reviews. So we're going to talk about why those are so important. And to help me with this conversation, I have my friend Greg Schaffer with VCSO Services. I probably got that wrong, but you're here with us. You are an expert in the area of cybersecurity. So talk to us a little bit about these third-party reviews and why they're so important and some key aspects we need to know about them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me back again. So when we talk about third-party vendor security reviews, first of all, we need to understand from a high perspective the what and the why of why we're doing it. And there's been a lot of push to move stuff from our organization. Like if you go back about 10, 20 years, typically we had all of the information within a data center within a company, and then we had a firewall that protected that from the internet. And then things started to move to the cloud. Like Office 365 is a very well-known cloud product. But when we increasingly rely upon the cloud for those sorts of services, we increase our what we call an attack surface. In other words, there are other places where the criminals can try to attack to get our confidential information. And a lot of these services, like for example, a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, probably, this isn't an endorsement, but just a fact of life, that they'll use something like QuickBooks, for example. So they have their financial information out there. Well, that's increased your attack surface now that your financial information is somewhere else than your organization. So the goal here is to identify any information security gaps from using a third party and then addressing those gaps. And again, this is probably more common than businesses will think. I mean, think about it. If you think about your business, just make a list. And this is one of the first things that we advise businesses to do. Make a list of all of the third-party providers you're using, and then make a list of what you're using them for. And case in point, not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, roughly, there was a Bank of America had a breach with 57,000 records. Okay. And those 57,000 records, that breach actually occurred because of a third party in a smaller business. And so you need to consider the risk of that third party and assess it appropriately because, And not all third parties, though, are going to be equal. If you have a lawn service, for example, there's someone out right now doing a little bit of leaf blowing outside my window. If you have a lawn service, then you probably don't need to do that much third-party risk management against them because they probably don't have much, if any, access to your confidential information. But something, again, like an organization that handles your financials, you definitely want to make sure that you examine their security controls.
Right. Because again, when you're running a company, as the leader, the buck stops with you. So, I would imagine there is a little bit of give and take because as a leader, it's your responsibility. But then again, that's why you hire these third parties. So how does having the third party, how does that change some of the responsibilities of the organization's leadership?
Well, one of the biggest risks is a misconception that just because we hire a third party, that all of a sudden our responsibility of maintaining the security of that data is now not ours anymore. And that's completely false. You never, ever, ever lose responsibility of making sure that your information is secure. You just have another thing now you got to be concerned about, and that is the security of the other provider. And we provide security by implementing what we call controls. Now, some controls are things that they do. Some are things that you need to do. Like, for example, you have a system out there that your employees log into. That's great, and they keep it secure. But you have to make sure that the folks that are able to log in there, that they're authorized to do so and that the list is current. And what I mean by that is that if you have somebody who leaves the organization, but you forget to tell your cloud service provider that they've left, and then that account is used for a breach, well, that's not their fault. That fault is on you. And this can get to be a little bit confusing about who is responsible for what and what some standards have. Like, for example, we've talked about PCI before a little bit. They have what they call a responsibility matrix, and it is as simple as it sounds. You have all of these requirements to meet that regulation, but both the vendor and you as the customer agree upon who is responsible for each one of those controls. And sometimes it's a dual responsibility. Now, that can be a little bit complex, but in the end of the day, what you're trying to do is to ensure that everybody is on the same page. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and without there being any sort of gaps in that process.
Yeah. So, when we're looking at bringing on these third parties, what are some of the common pitfalls that we need to be thinking about when we are assessing if their platform is going to be the best platform for us?
You should always look at their third-party audits. Just about every large company out there, and many of the medium-sized companies, some of the smaller ones as well too, will have some sort of a third-party attestation of the security, because it doesn't make any sense. You can't go in yourself and do an information security audit on their organization. It's not practical because of time-wise. You probably don't have the skill set for it. You probably don't have the desire for it. And that's why we have these organizations that actually conduct these audits. So ask a third-party service provider, can I see your SOC 2 report? And then read it. Like, again, we talked about Office 365. Microsoft will gladly provide you with they call it a SOC 2 report. It'll explain what it is that they're providing you, who looked over the system, what the result of that audit was, and then it has a lot of detail as to what they actually did. It's your responsibility to make sure that those audits have been done. And if there were any exceptions to that audit, that the company, like a Microsoft, has addressed them correctly. And plus, within those reports too are usually some sections, like in the SOC 2, it talks about something called complementary user entity controls. These are things that you as an organization are responsible to do to make sure that their controls are working. That was the example that I gave beforehand with regards to the user. So again, understanding the shared responsibility when using third parties and understanding your responsibility to ensure that they're doing what they say they're going to do are the key aspects to securely using third-party service providers.
And I think we need to do a better job of understanding that these third parties, even though they're called third parties, they're really an extension of us. They're a part of our team. And so we really have to communicate well. And again, we really have to do our due diligence because we can only be as strong as the entire unit is. So this is why I think it's so important that we're sharing these and that organizations work with an expert like you. So where can people find you? Share with us, where is your website and the best way for people to reach out to you?
The website is vcisoservices.com. So vcisoservices.com. And on there, we've got a lot of resources for small and mid-sized businesses, not only what we do, how we could help, but also in our blog section, we got a link to our book for security for small and mid-sized businesses. Now, for me, you can reach out to me. Probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. So long as you're not trying to sell me anything, I usually connect with everybody. Would love to talk to you there. I'm pretty active on there, and hey, it could be like free advice right there because I'm always answering questions for small and mid-sized businesses. So
Fantastic. Well, Greg, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us today. And for all of you that are watching, remember, we cannot achieve success on our own. It's a team effort. And when you bring in your third parties, they are going to be part of your team. So make sure you are doing your due diligence. Make sure you are asking the right questions, because we want to make sure that we are delivering value and service at the highest level possible, because that is how we all stay productive. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short break. Hi, and welcome back to Be Productive. I'm your host, Clara Capano. You probably have heard that the number one fear that people have, even more than death, is public speaking. But you know what? We don't need to be afraid when we have the skill sets behind us. Public speaking is so powerful, and it's something that we use in everyday life. Now, as a speaker myself with over 25 years, that doesn't mean that I even know it all. So what we want to do is really have a discussion around the skill sets that we can use to help you start to embrace the ability to go out there and to connect with others on the public front. So to help me with this conversation is my friend Todd Wall. Todd, welcome to the show.
Clara, I cannot wait to talk about this. I have hundreds of hours on stage, but people don't believe it. I am an introvert, and yet hours and hours and hours upon stage, because there is a formula for unleashing this magic.
There really is. And we are going to have some fun with this because both of us are speakers. So we're going to have some fun with this. So let's talk about this. Again, it is a skill set. It takes practice. So what would you say are some of the best ways that if somebody wants to improve their public speaking skills, what do they need to do? So let's start unpacking this formula.
I think first off, it's beginning to understand that no matter if you're on a stage, or in a virtual environment like this, it's a dialogue that you're looking to create. You're looking to create a thinking environment to where you're not just, blowhard speaking a bunch of noise at people and maybe a percentage will listen, but you're creating a dialogue where they're actually thinking about what you're saying. And so that begins with, how do I make a connection with these people? Now, and so I believe it's the understanding of, first, let me say, here's where I did it wrong. Early on in speaking, I prepped every little thing I wanted to say down to every little I and T, and I had everything crossed and perfect. And I would go verbatim through that little script, and I would blow hard and go, 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 go. In fact, I even had one time where they turned the light. I kept going and going and going, and they turned the lights off. They turned the mic off, and I kept going because I wasn't listening to my audience. It was a valuable lesson.
Yeah, because then it sounds like a script. So again, doing these and, you have to be able to practice it. But I love the idea of, again, really thinking about the connection that you want to have. And this concept of, even though you might be the one on stage, or you might be the one in your office giving the presentation, the more that you can turn it into a dialogue, a conversation, it makes it more interactive. And again, it brings in that connection. So what are some of the best techniques that you have out there? So, because again, with presentations, we've all been through it. We've all been through those presentations where you're like, oh my dear God, we've only been here 3 minutes. It seems like 3 hours. So how do we take a presentation and really make it both impactful, but also engaging for the audience?
Absolutely. I believe it's all about working within a framework and not the specific details. That means unchain yourself from the slide deck. Don't go slide by slide by slide by slide. It lowers your credibility because it decreases your connection. Now, every television broadcast you watch in sports, they're operating within a framework, and they're able to communicate and connect very naturally with millions of people. So you begin every single message beginning with, what is the problem that's at hand? What is the ideal outcome that this organization or this situation actually wants? Now, what's at stake in this situation? If we win, this will occur. If we lose, this will occur. And then you begin a indirect communication, not by being, this is what you have to do, but it's now, if we do this, then this can occur. And then there's always has to be a call to action. That's a basic 5-part framework that I use for virtually every single message I use. It becomes plug and play, because you must understand, you must trust that you are an authority in your job, in your role. You know the details. Where we get anxiety is we think of in terms of the message as a whole. But if you just go piece by piece by piece and just live in that moment for a minute, just like playing Candyland. I'm on the red piece right now, and I'm only going to be on the red piece. Now I'm going to the green piece, and I'm just here, and my brain is just going to be in this spot until it's time to go to the yellow piece. And so you just live in that singular moment, and your brain is able to slow down, not have to think about all the details, but you can just live in that moment because you do know the details.
You do.
And they'll
And
just
again, when you are
naturally
an
come out
expert,
as
you
you
got to
try to
have that
connect.
confidence. Yeah, I love what you're saying. And again, yeah, don't get so attached to that screen and those slides. Again, know the material, but believe in yourself. Now, one of the things that I think messes a lot of people up is they get in their spiel. They're like, okay, I know what I want to say. And then all of a sudden, somebody asks a question. And then we're down the rabbit hole, or it's a question that maybe we weren't anticipating. And so many people are terrified of, what if I am asked a question I don't know the answer to? So how do you think, and how have you been successful in being able to effectively handle questions and objections, from the audience, from the team?
I think there's 2 elements to it. First off, when you operate within a framework, you always have an anchor point to know exactly where you're at. If you've defined an initial thesis statement for your message, you can even go back to repeat that, and it will remind you exactly where you need to go. It becomes your compass. So your 2 compass anchor points are your thesis, and then which element of the framework are you on. So that's how you can avoid getting lost. Now, difficult questions. This is where I lean on the principles of improv. And, like Talladega Nights and Will Ferrell and all these brilliant movies we love, they're built on the principles of improv. And it's the power of yes and. So with yes and, they never negate or disagree with anything anyone says, even if they take the conversation in a different direction. They always begin everything with agreement. And this is what's taught my little introvert brain to be able to handle complex information or complex situations, even combative situations, is I'm not trying to combat anyone. I'm just saying yes. And another thing is this. Yeah. And another thing that's true is also this. It always begins with agreement. And then how can you one up that situation?
Yeah. And I think also going back to one of your earlier points of, again, be the expert, when you're the expert, again, having that confidence. And it also is okay to say, you know what? I don't have the answer to that right now. Let me gather that. Or that's a very good question. That's something that I hadn't, thought about before. Let's workshop this together or something like that. So I've even been on the fly of saying, well, let's role play that and let's dialogue that together right now. So again, knowing that they are there to learn from you. So you need to control the process and just, know those things. But it is just so fascinating. And, you shared the, earlier that, you are an introvert. Many people don't know, but I actually used to be terrified of public speaking. So for anybody that's watching this, again, don't let those things hold you back, because you have a message to deliver. And I think, when you really are passionate and you know that you're coming from a place of delivering value, you have an obligation to share that information. So I think the more, hitting on some of the things that you talked about with, again, the preparation of being in the moment and just being very present there. Again, getting that dialogue and that, connection going. Those are all going to be key things, to work on.
Clara, I was coaching someone this week, and they were having this anxiety about forming as a manager, and having that authority of presenting that, that strength and knowing everything. And I asked the question, I said, are they wanting you to be Google or know how to operate Google? So clarity on what is your role here. Are they wanting you to be the smartest person in the room or the one who facilitates and gets to the best outcome?
Yeah.
So understanding and the clarity of your role can really prevent you from getting defensive in that situation and playing off those other people, even if they're really difficult conversations.
Absolutely. Really great point. And what I also love about all the points you're making, they are relevant whether you are giving a talk to 5,000 people or you're giving a talk to your sales team, or even if you're just working with someone one-on-one. All of these things still apply. And so I think, really, really key items. So now, Todd, if people want to work with you, you are a coach, you're a communication coach. So you help people not just with the public speaking, but with negotiations, with, understanding emotional intelligence, with being able to improve their skills around active listening. Where is the best place for people to find you if they want to look at maybe working with you more?
LinkedIn, you can find me at Todd Wall, and Instagram, you can find me at TV Toad.
Perfect. Love it. Well, for all of you following, take these things to heart. Everything is an interaction. And the more that we can engage with others, the more that we can focus on delivering value, and the more that we can make it a conversation. It allows us to, again, go deeper, to make sure that we are being more clear with our messages. And that's how we really are going to be able to serve and connect at the highest level. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back. One of the things that I really love about hosting the show is I get to learn. And as much as I hope you are walking away with value, I do too. And some of the big messages that stood out for me today as I was taking my own notes, the importance of getting reviews and testimonials. We need to pay attention to what others are saying, but also let's leverage some of those to open the doors to future opportunities. One of the most powerful discussions we had is on our ability to connect. So many people think that you only can have success in business if you're an extrovert. And we heard from one of our contributors who's having amazing success, and he is an introvert, because it's about the value we are delivering, the messaging that we are delivering, not if we are an introvert or an extrovert. We're talking about scaling. So many of us get into what we do because we have these big dreams and big visions, but we can only do that when we scale and grow with purpose. And then also, we've got to watch that bottom line. It is so easy to start a business and then just start dumping money in because we think that's going to allow us to grow. But we're not always doing it with purpose and intention. So going over some of the key things that we need to think about. So again, we are really growing in the right way. So I am so grateful for today's guest, and I am so grateful for you as the viewers, because you keep us going strong. So thank you so much for allowing me to share today's insights with you. I'm Clara Capano, and I look forward to seeing you next time for another episode of Be Productive.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights